Hi, and welcome to another episode of Soul Sessions. Today, we're diving into kind of a different topic than we've talked about previously. We're talking about gay Latin culture, and we're going to talk about the exploration of chosen families and kind of the healing and transformative power that holds. Today, we have a special guest, Damian, who is going to talk about his journey through this and kind of share some insight and perspective into what that looks like for different people. But
Hi.
a little a little intro is that for many people in the LGBTQ plus community, rejection from biological families can lead to deep wounds. And I see that in my clinical practice. I have kids that are, 15, 16 experiencing that right now. And I've had friends who've experienced this, and it really could be damaging. But in that, I hear a lot of stories about finding families and or even being part of a found family and kind of really enjoying learning about them and being that healing space for them and allowing them to really share with me and lean into me for support. So, Damien, my
Yes.
first question for you is, can you share with us a little bit about who you are, your background, and how this identity has shaped you?
Okay, who I am. Well, again, my name is Damian Plaza. I am 57 years old, just had a birthday this past week. I am
Happy
of Puerto
birthday.
Rican, thank you, Puerto Rican slash Mexican descent. Very, 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 very proud of both cultures. I identify as Damian as just a gay male. I don't hide that. I never had to hide it. And I just don't understand when we get stigmatized and pushed into the closet. I just never got it. So I am a professional. I'm an investigator with the city of Chicago, and I'm also the president of one of the local unions here in the city of Chicago with over 600 members. So
Awesome.
yeah,
That's really cool.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
s- so what can you tell us about a little bit about your experience growing up in a Latino household and like the supports you had there and
Okay. Well, growing up in a Latino household, I grew up in Bucktown, actually not too far from your mom, on Cortland and Walcott. I found out your mom lived on North End Walcott,
and
so
Walcott,
few
yeah.
blocks away. Yeah. So I grew up in the 70s, of course. It was a predominantly white area.
Hmm.
Not many Latinos, as you know, as you may or may not know, Latinos weren't accepted so fast over there in
Hmm.
that area. In a Latin household, I grew up with my mom and my brothers. My sisters didn't live with us, and I did have a stepfather because my dad left early on. He lived in New York, and basically, growing up in a Latin household, it was pretty normal, sort of. I say that because my stepfather wasn't with um, my mom supporting her kids. So basically, she had to work also to support her own kids while she lived with him. And they have one child together, which is my little brother. Yeah.
Hmm.
So it was difficult because I didn't think that my stepdad accepted me
Hmm.
because one, I was already showing signs of being different, and the way I was, I just never hid anything. Even at an early age, it was just not something that I did, and even though it wasn't accepted, it didn't matter to me. I mean, I was building up um, my own personality, and that gave me a survival tactic. Just to survive Latino culture and being gay, even at an early age.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like also time period wise too of
Oh, yeah.
how, yeah, how that really affects those interactions or being yourself. Like,
Yeah,
do
absolutely.
you have any reflections on that or?
Well, you know what? When I was growing up in Bucktown, I mean, it was a little bit difficult, and even when I would hang around with my friends, they did notice something different about me.
Hmm.
So I remember one time staying over at one of my friends' home. He lived in Kankakee. He lived in Chicago in Bucktown, but they had a summer home in Kankakee, and I was invited there every summer. And I remember I heard his stepdad saying, "You got to be careful with him and our son because there's something really fruity about him." And that was about
God.
maybe 9 or 10 years old. And I remember that, and I didn't understand the concept of what that meant. Little by little, I started noticing what it was, and that kind of like shut me down with them. But
Mm.
I don't know. It just changed the whole paradigm of who I was going to be, but for the better.
Mm, that's
Yeah.
good. Did you
Yeah.
ever? Like, do you have any early recollections of like any anxiety or, mental health struggles that you experienced with those things or?
Oh, absolutely. Even going to school, I mean, I remember the boys would say, "Oh my God, he walks like a girl," and that would really like mess with my mind a lot. I mean, in terms of today, at a young age, I had to butch it up, so to speak. I had to
Hmm.
act a little bit more masculine and stuff. And I was a little boy still, so I didn't get that. But I remember only when I was with my Puerto Rican cousins, um, when my mom would go, well, they were my relatives by chosen from my mom.
Hmm.
And they used to tell me, just be yourself, just be yourself. And I was. And that kind of helped me mentally to survive going back home all the time because, they didn't care. Why does everybody else have to care? But again,
Right,
living in Bucktown, it was all predominantly white. So it was a very different paradigm from what I was used to with my family.
right, right,
So yeah,
right. Living in kind of two different worlds is
yeah, you
definitely
had
hard.
to. You had to change it up, especially as a gay Latino kid. You had to change it up because if not, you'd get beat up. And I wasn't about to get beat up. I could
I
fight, but
mean,
still.
period. I mean, you shouldn't have to either. It's just
Yeah. But 70s,
unless
it's a different
the
thing. It
different
was a
time.
different
Yeah.
time and the machismo was real.
Mhm.
Whether it was within my own culture or just in general, the machismo was very real. And until I became an adult, I didn't understand the whole concept of the machismo. I just
Mhm.
lived my life the way I was supposed to, you
Mhm.
know?
I was just talking with my brother kind of about this topic, and he was talking about being a kid in the 90s and
Mm,
the media he was exposed to. He was talking about like movies he liked to watch were like Rambo and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they were very
mm,
much like to be a man, like you have to be shooting guns, you have to be like super hyper
mm.
masculine. And he also talked about watching rom-coms with my mom and like being exposed to like this more gushy side. And for him, he talked about his journey of kind of trying to meet in the middle and but still feeling kind of the pressure from familial friends of like what it
Ah,
means to be a man, let alone be a Latino man and raised by other Latinos that kind of don't, have these same ideas that you might have.
isn't that something? I mean, it's still a parallel universe because even as in the 70s, it was kind of that way too. Um,
Mm,
I couldn't watch girl shows. I couldn't
mm,
hang around with girls. I couldn't wear bright colors. It was just like you had to be a boy and that's it. And that could lead to a lot of confusion in it. And you internalize it later on. But when I reflect and look back now, I'm like, you know what? I internalized it to the point where I shut down and I started
yes.
just being a nerdy kid, so to speak, just so that I wouldn't
Mm,
get, oh, he's acting funny. So I had to change it up at an early age. And that I don't think that's very healthy for a child. I'm
it's
talking
not.
about child maybe 10, 11. I'm still considered a child, and I didn't have the people to support me and back me up. My sisters did, whenever I went to their homes, because one lived with my grandmother, my older sister, and my little sister lives with my aunt. And I could be myself with them. But when I went home, my brothers was a totally different thing. I mean,
Mm.
they didn't care, but at the same time, the neighborhood changed it up. I couldn't act a certain way. I couldn't be a certain way. They were in Boy Scouts. I had to be in Boy Scouts and I hated it because that uniform was bad. Um, they
That's
would,
funny. I begged to be in Girl Scouts and
oh,
I never got to do it.
oh, I didn't want it. I didn't want it. I felt uncomfortable. Even the Boy Scout masters, they could see something different about me and they would treat me
Mm,
differently. So when my brothers were doing certain things to get badges, I was pushed to the side. And I never understood it. I understood it later on because it was a homophobia within them.
mm-hmm,
So what can you do? And as a Latino male, first of all, these are white males. As a Latino male, I didn't identify. I didn't identify
right.
with being a Boy Scout, let alone with a white male Boy Scout leader trying to tell me how to be a man. It didn't
Right.
work. It didn't
Right.
work.
And your experience as of being a Latino man is going to be different than a white man
Yeah,
and how
absolutely.
they, are socialized and how they're kind of able to take things and do
Oh
things
yeah.
without repercussions.
Well, it's a cultural thing too. I mean, I wasn't in a culture where they were talking about Latino subjects. They were only talking
Right.
about what they experienced as what they saw, the Christopher Columbus kind of thing, and I don't know. It was really hard for me growing up. It was extremely hard for me, but I made it. Suicide was there,
That's
don't get it wrong. I did attempt suicide, but
really.
that's yeah. So I think it was at the age of 14, I was at my cousin's house and I took so many different pills. And my cousin was a gay male also, and he was a jerk. I didn't know
Mm,
until adult later on that he was being such a mischievous and horrible person behind my back. But he told me, yeah, just take your life, just take all the pills you want because your
Wow.
family doesn't accept you being gay, just kill yourself. He actually told me this. And so when I did finally take, all those pills, I went to my mom where she was on the block with a friend and she took me to the hospital and they kept me there for about a week on observation. I guess they thought, it's a mental health breakdown or whatever,
Mhm.
but that didn't help neither. I'm sorry. So yeah, so like I said, it's just something that people don't get. I mean, but you can affect
Yeah,
a child's mind really bad.
you really can't. Yeah, no, that's awful that somebody would say that to somebody so young or that you had to go through that. I think I
Right
see
on.
that, yeah, I see that a lot too with anybody feeling rejection, to be honest,
Yeah.
even if it has nothing to do with any identities, but kids, especially in those like, early teen years, 10s, 11, you're so dependent on what other people think about you. And you
Yeah.
really want to appease people or you want to like fit in. And when you don't fit that mold and you can't figure out how to get there because you're just different and that's okay, but you can't realize that in the moment, it's really, really leaves its mark and it really, really affects kids.
Well, I considered it the square peg saga of my life. I was a square peg. But eventually, like I said, if you are strong enough and you have the people around you, as we'll speak about chosen family soon, you'll know that it's gonna be okay. And you're okay and you're a good person. And just because you're different, that's not a big deal. But it takes you a
Yes.
while to really realize that. And it took my mom quite a while to realize it, but it works if you're a loving person and if you're doing things with good intention, then you should be okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I completely agree. I
Yeah.
think we kind of talked about this a little bit, but how did your Latino family react to like your identity of being a gay man? And
Yeah. Well, let's go back. Gay kid. They already knew something was up. So I remember I had a conversation with an older uncle who he only has girls, and he was probably the only one who really accepted me. I was about 12 or 13, and I would go to his house a lot to visit my cousins because we used to hang out. And he said, you know what, I'm going to tell you something. And I remember it so vividly. He's no longer with us, but I just treasure the moment that he told me that because it changed a lot of things. He says, I don't care what you do with your life. I don't care what anything about your lifestyle, whatever. You come here, you treat my girls with respect, you treat us with respect, and I love you for that, and be yourself. Until then, no family member has ever said that. And my uncle was, he was from Texas, tough, cowboy kind of guy. But that changed a lot for me. And prior to him dying many years before, I let him know that. And he says, I didn't know that. He goes, he didn't even remember it. And then finally I triggered his mind. He said, oh, I remember that. I said, yeah, but that changed what love was to me from another relative. And I
hmm
respected that so much. And I respect him for that. But then you have the other relatives who they're not so kind. But like I
Right.
said, it's what you're gonna take life as. And I took it as a positive. I said, let's just keep going. So I was good with it.
I think that is amazing, even at such a young age, to kind of keep rolling with the punches in a way
Yeah, yeah.
and keep kind of growing from that. But I know a lot of people that sometimes might get stuck there
Oh
and
yeah.
then they, get more depressed or experience more other, other mental illness, disorders and
Absolutely.
illnesses. And I
Absolutely.
think it's important in this, you're mentioning like your support system and you're talking about kind of exploring these different people. And when you were younger, did you think about like what a support system would mean to you or what it would look like?
Well, yeah, I mean, not until I got into high school, I ended up in an alternative high school because of such a the mental health thing took a toll on me. So I couldn't adjust in a regular high school. It was just too much. It was just I had anxiety beyond anxiety. And now I look back, that's what it was, but I didn't know that's what it was back then. I had when I would see crowds, I'd freak out, I'd start sweating, I would avoid people. Um, because remember, I was brought up in Bucktown, which was a yuppie neighborhood. And at the age of 15, I believe, my mom and stepfather separated, and I ended up on by Farragut High School on 24th and Christiana, which is South Side.
That's idea.
Extremely different environment from what I was used to. So I used to go through the alleys because I was so afraid of everybody. I lasted at
Mm.
Farragut for 2 days. I couldn't do it. I mean,
2 days?
Yeah, Latinos there were evil with me because, the machismo was real.
Yeah.
So my mechanism was, on the outside, I lived right across the street from the school, is to befriend all the girls, the
Mm.
gangbangers, the leaders of the gangs. And I did that. And that was to my advantage because then after that, nobody could do anything to me. I mean, so I thought, but I mean, that's how I did it.
Yeah,
That's how I
I mean,
survived, survival mode.
makes sense. And
Yeah.
those girls, and I'm assuming they were supportive and really good to you, or
Oh God, yeah. They wouldn't let anybody say anything to me. Plus, I would give them makeup tips, so it always helped. But I
it's
mean,
a win-win.
yeah, it's a win-win. But like I said, it's you got to figure it out at an early age. And when you don't have people to put you on that right path, you have to figure it out on your own. And as an LGBT kid in Little Village, because after I left Bucktown, I went to Little Village. You got to adapt super quick. But again, I was still going through the alleys when I would go home or when I'd go
Mm,
somewhere. I'd always go through the alleys. I wouldn't go through the front because I was terrified.
mm.
But that changed. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think that's a good kind of segue to talking about chosen families and what that means to different people. I think I've mentioned a little bit of having friends who identify as queer and becoming part of their chosen family because
Yeah.
of familial rejection and parents not understanding or thinking it's just a phase, whatever the hell that means. Um,
Yes. I've heard that a lot.
and yes, it's for me, it's very striking because I have a very supportive family. And they're very open to everything, very open book. So for me, it was kind of jarring to hear that people were having these experiences. Like, how could you not love your child for like who they are? How could you not like love your niece or like I have nieces and one of them she cut off all her hair and like she doesn't, people are always questioning, like, oh, is she identifying this way or is she identifying that way? And I'm like, does it
Oh,
matter right now?
yeah,
I want her to be happy. And however she wants to be happy, that if she wants to cut off all her hair again, get a mullet, I don't care. If she
absolutely.
wants to do something else, I don't care. So I think for me, that has been hard of hearing my friends' stories and how they've, had some very vile things said and done to them. And just
Yeah,
for the simple act of existing. And I just wanted to ask you, like, for my, generation and for my friends, I think we have a very beautiful way of defining chosen family and how it looks and how they've built one. And I was just curious about if you have or how you've gone about that and what does it mean to you?
absolutely. Okay, so I guess that you could say I had three chosen families because on the north side of Chicago, I ended up with a dance group called the Colito Dancers.
Okay.
And I've been with them ever since I was like 12. So they were one of the chosen families. And then my New York, I'm also part of the House of Extravaganza. And that's in New York, and I'm in the Chicago chapter. I'm actually a father here in the city of Chicago with some of my kids.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, and then my nickname is Omen X. X means extravaganza, but it also means X-Men Posse because also too as a young adults, I joined up with another chosen family. We called ourselves the X-Men Posse on the north side. I'm still very close to these people and I love them dearly. And if it wasn't for them, I don't think I would have survived Chicago the way I thought I would. Because
Mm,
chosen family, I mean, you gravitate. You take care of each other. You nurture each other and love
mhm,
each other. And it's not non-sexual. Some people are like, oh, you guys are all no, it's nothing sexual. It's like a real family. You just become so close to each other and you help each other out. And I think that is one of the most beautiful things in this society now, that even in Chicago, I see so many of the houses. Houses are the chosen families. I see them here. And when I speak to someone, they're like, yeah, you're from one of the houses that was way back in the day. Yeah, that shows my age. But it's the concept is still the same. We still take care of each other. You guys take care of each other, except now, it's a bigger thing, and it's hard getting in certain families, like the extravaganza family. It's very hard to get into now, but back
mm,
then, yeah, we gravitated. We became one, and then on the north side, I became the X-Men Posse. Friends to this day, very successful people. We melded into society very well. We were partiers. If we bought a hamburger, it would be split between 5 or 6 people. That's how much it
wow.
was. A bag of fries for all of us. We took care of each other. Nobody ever went hungry. Nobody ever didn't have a place to stay. I used to have people stay with me on the south side of Chicago. And like I said, it was just something that I love seeing, and I'm glad that it's continuing to this day. Yeah.
It is. It is. So how did you kind of like go about finding one or like looking or or it finding you? Because I know
They
that's a
find
lot of,
you.
yeah, it's
They find
experience.
you. The X-Men Posse, if I remember correctly, I was at one of the clubs and one of the guys gravitated towards me. We started talking. He said, "Oh, we should hang out." He's one of my best friends now. And little by little, all of us just started coming together and we just called ourselves that and we became that. And so I think it gravitated. And then other families, if you don't have a place to stay, somebody sees that, they're gonna say, "Why don't you just come stay with me?" Or that you got, I mean, in this day and age,
Mhm.
it's a little bit different because you got to be careful. But back then,
Right.
les enfants terribles, it's the terrible children they called us, but
Um,
we gravitated and we took care of each other and you find each other. Sometimes you see someone that you want to help. You said, "Oh, you should be part of our family." So you grow that way. Some of the kids that I
mhm.
have here in the city of Chicago, that's how I found them. I said, "You should be part of our family." Oh, yeah, and they take the name. So the X comes behind their name. Yeah, so it's
That's
chosen, but
awesome.
it's loving. It's loving. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I know that that could be like so healing for a lot of people in the fact of after all this rejection or all of this kind of, in a way, abuse that you've
Yeah.
experienced, and you meet people that are willing to love and accept you for who you are and what you are in that moment. I think that is something that's very beautiful and something that I hope continues because
Oh,
I
me
think
too.
so many people would really, really benefit from that, especially
Oh,
after
yeah.
trauma experiences and all sorts of things that really help you kind of realize that family, sometimes blood family isn't everything. And sometimes you got to go and look for something else, unfortunately, but that's
Yeah,
how it
I mean,
works.
it is what it is. I think that's why too. I'm also my undergrad is in social work, so I still keep in touch with those kids and those adults that I helped back in the day because they're like, you never. They would tell me, you never judged us, you never
Mm,
criticized us. Well, because I was there at one time, I wanted to be treated the way you want to be treated, with
right.
respect. Sometimes they're rebellious, but at the same time, you break walls. You have to break walls. And my thing when I was younger is when you don't care, you don't cry. And so that's what I held all my
Mm,
life. And so I became an adult and I broke out of that cocoon and I said, you know what? I got to start caring.
hmm.
It doesn't mean you're going to be gullible and fall for everybody who says, "Oh, I love you." And, no, it's just that you're very cautious, but at the same time, you got to open up because without that love, you're not going to have anything at all. That's what
Yes.
grows everything. You have to put the seed in to start.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I think I I've been described as nonchalant and not caring sometimes, and I think that I think also recognizing that caring looks different for each person and
Yes.
how we express and give love is going to be different. And sometimes a lot of people associate love or acceptance with, words and but
Mm. And
really it's not. To me, it's the actions, it's what you do on the day to
yes.
day. It's how you interact with this person. If a person's going through a hard time, are you going to be that support system that could really help
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
versus somebody that just basically like gaslights you for
Oh
the
God. Yeah.
duration of some time, like, and their words mean nothing because they don't have any actions to back it up. The words are nice, they're beautiful, they could be very poetic, but they could also be useless sometimes.
Absolutely. So I always say that too at my funeral. I don't want people to start crying and say, "Oh, I miss them so much." Someone that I know just passed away on Facebook,
Hmm.
and I, I used to call her all the time. She was transgendered, and I used to call her as much as I could. And when I did talk to her, because she did have 4 strokes at one time, and she was very young,
Oh wow.
and it's funny. On her page, I don't see people posting. And when I talked to her, she goes, "Yeah, nobody calls me anymore." But now all of a sudden, everybody's posting how much I miss her. What a beautiful person. Don't do that. So I got people ready. So when I die, if you do that, my people are going to attack you. No, your actions
No,
mean more. Actions mean more than
more.
words. Words are nice. Yeah, they'll heal for a second. But if you're not showing me you love me, or don't pretend. I don't need that.
It's not.
And these kids don't need it neither. And when I say
No.
kids, anyone under the me, you just have to be genuine and I try even with relatives. I try my best to be loving, and it's like some don't accept it, so I just gave
And they
up. I
won't.
said,
And they won't
yeah,
they won't get
yeah,
it. Yeah. I
for the most.
think, yeah, I mean that, and that's for me, that's like a minority of like relatives and family members.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I think for those that don't accept you or don't understand or because you're different or whatever, I think one of the biggest things that I've tried to do is like boundaries and be very firm in my boundaries,
Oh, yeah,
because I can't let people walk all over me for the sake of just being used by another person.
absolutely, absolutely.
And I think that like the boundaries are hard to do, especially with people that are your family members, or you know, in Latin culture, being elders or your
Yeah,
parents, your
yes,
grandparents.
yes, yes,
Can't can't tell how well to shut up. That's not something you do, but you can find a more, graceful, elegant way
absolutely, absolutely. I
to
mean, it
get
goes
around
for
it.
everybody. I think I just think, especially in the Latin culture, yeah, we were raised very differently. If you say something,
Right.
you're
No.
gonna get it. And it wasn't called abuse, it was called respect. In the Latino
Hmm.
culture, you when my mom gave you that look, ooh, and I'm sure your mom was the same way.
Yeah, she still is.
It-
She still
well, that's why I love Carmen. But I think, like growing up, I remember my stepdad spanked me one time in front of everybody, and it was the white families who were really pissed off. Oh my God, we don't believe you're hitting him and this and that. And I get it, but that's part of our culture, and that broke me away from doing that ever again. And it wasn't abuse, it was just a spank, a little spanking, but
is. Right.
it showed me, you know what? No, I got to keep on the straight and narrow. So when LGBT kids, especially in Latino culture, are not accepted, it breaks my heart because it's like, man, I went through that, and I don't want any of these kids, again, kids or anybody under me, as far as my age, I go very protective. I started the first LGBT group in the city of Chicago when I was working with your mom
Oh
at
wow.
um at the agency on North.
Yeah.
And those kids are adults and they have kids and they're with me to this day. And they say, yeah, if it wasn't for you, I came on an article back then. One of the guys who is a community activist, he just sent me the article again. He goes, remember you were working in North Avenue? You did, yeah. So that was really cool because it was kind of a pioneering thing, and
Mm,
it keeps going and going and going. And I
it
love that
does.
because these kids are even younger than me, and they're way more experienced with the LGBT thing than I was back then. I
Yeah.
lived it. Now they really took it to a whole nother level. And
Yeah.
I'm excited about that.
It is. And I think with also the power of social media and kind
Oh,
of the ability to be
yeah,
exposed to things and
yeah,
educate and, really in a maybe a safe way too, of like being able to explore your identity and share things and live things, like so many creators online are part of the LGBTQ plus
oh yeah,
community. So many of them are, and they're amazing. Like it's so cool to watch them and see how they grow. And I think kids now are really, just because of how we are as a society, are exposed to that right away. So it
yeah.
creates a whole different narrative.
Very innovative too, the way they're doing it. Even like you, look at you, look where you're at. I remember you weren't even born yet. I went
Oh
to your
yeah.
baby shower when your mom had a baby shower. And when I was looking at your podcast, like, that's not Jessica. Oh my God. It's amazing to see this, especially you guys and the younger generation has such power right now that we didn't have. The social media is an incredible thing. You guys have this voice that we could only imagine back then. Yeah,
Mm,
we had radio, we had all these different things, but nothing like now. I mean, the TikToks I see and the Instagrams, I'm like, amazing. Even my House of Extravaganza, it was the reason why Pose was made. Pose, my
really?
grandfather and my father of the house is on the stage when you see them. Yeah, they're on there. The whole creator of Extravaganza was Hector Extravaganza, who passed away not too long ago. He's on the stage when they're doing Pose. So
Oh
yeah,
wow.
we go way back when. So
I love Pose. So.
yeah, I do too. It's just amazing, and the ballroom culture is amazing. But these kids, they do ballrooms here in Chicago, and I just found out about it a few years ago. I'm like, what? They're doing that still? They go, yeah, they're doing it here. So it's amazing that you guys have this strength and resilience that a lot of us back then, even though we had it, we couldn't show it. We
Mm,
became with our chosen families and stuff, but now, my God, you're so open, guys with nail polish, and I love
mhm.
it. I think it's amazing. So it hurts me when I hear someone has, you know, died a violent death because of something like this. My God, what does that do to everybody else? I mean, this mental health is a breakdown. We gotta be careful with that.
It's actually insane thinking about, like, I was kind of talking about this earlier, but like how far we've come and how far we've still stayed in the same spot is really, really like wild to me, because I only know what's happened in the last 25 years related to like
Yeah,
identity and stuff like that. But from my experience, even thinking of like when I was in like seventh and eighth grade, there was this thing of the boys, calling each other names and slurs, and that was like,
yeah,
yeah, that was the thing. But thinking now, even as recently, it sucks. It really sucks because even as recently as 2022, like 45% of LGBTQ plus youth have seriously considered suicide.
Yeah,
And that number has probably grown, to be honest, with in light of, recent politics and
the politics,
all the,
yes.
yes, and the exposure to the politics too, because like
Yeah, it terrifies me.
it does.
And
Yeah, I know.
I can understand it sort of because I mean, I don't want to make this political, but I can take care of my end on politics when somebody says something.
Mhm.
These kids don't have any idea, and it's hurting them. The just the transgender suicide rate in Latinos is so high right now.
It is.
I don't understand this. I don't get it. And I always tell people, even the kids that I used to work with at the LGBT at, at, on North Avenue, they tell
Mhm.
me, Damian, but we started these groups and all of a sudden now we got to hide again. I said, you know what? It's not that you guys have to hide. It's just that you have to be able to present it in another way and be very proud of it. Don't back down
Mhm.
because we can't go back 50 years. I remember
No.
in the 80s, actually, it was hard for us to be out, and to see the pioneering things that these kids are doing now. I don't want us to go back. So that's why I tell people you got to be ahead of the game. I'm
Yes.
fortunate at this age, but a lot of the young people, they just don't get it. I said, just be careful, but you can't stop. Don't let this stop you know, your future goals. Finish it,
Right.
It's
Right. Well, I
tough.
think that's like the fear. That's the whole idea. That's what they're, again, not to make it political, but that's what some people are striving for, is to,
Yeah.
spark that fear in you so that you shut up and be quiet.
Mhm.
But I think what you're saying is right. You do have to keep going and be as loud and even obnoxious as possible, so
Have
that,
to.
because when you think about how we've made change, we didn't make change by being quiet or stopping or shutting up.
Absolutely.
It was
Absolutely.
about being loud and authentically who you are, and however that comes across.
Yeah, but it
But
has to be done. I mean, like I said, you guys have the tools now, and we've given that baton over, but I'm still not done. I mean, I'm still doing what I have to do. I'm very vocal, especially on Facebook. People say sometimes you say a little bit too much controversy. It's not that I'm doing controversy. I need to make sure that these youngins are gonna do what they have to do to keep going because I'm not gonna be here forever. I
mhm.
mean, a lot of us did a lot of good in the past, but there's still so much more work we have to do, especially considering the atmosphere of the politics right now. That's going to change things, and it may take us back further behind. Don't let
It
it
will,
stop you. Yeah.
right. And I think, especially after this last election, I think
Mm.
there was a lot of defeat and hopelessness feeling.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I don't think we should allow that to kind of cloud how we keep going, or our viewpoints going forward, because again, that's what they want and that's what they're looking for. And you don't necessarily want to give people what they want. So
No, you got to fight. You got to keep going because, like I said, there's always going to be an extra battle.
all the
Conquer
time.
that one and do another one. Just keep going. What happened, happened, and I hate that it happened, but it's not going to stop us.
Mhm.
We're a tough people. We're going to keep going. Latinos don't break, not like that. Not at
No,
all.
not at all. Not at all. Um, I guess you've maybe have answered this, but what do you think, kind of going back to this chosen family idea, and I really would like to talk more about the pose stuff, but we could talk
Yeah,
about that another time.
of
But
course.
what do you think are like the most valuable lessons your chosen family has taught you about love and acceptance?
Oh God, resilience. The number one, resilience. When somebody says fag, you don't break, because
Mhm.
yeah, I know it's a strong word and it's very derogatory to many, but you're not hurting me with that word. And my chosen family, we were attacked all the time. And most of us looked like thugs, believe it or not. I mean, we had tattoos, we had our hats tilted, we had the baggy pants. Uh, so even in gay clubs, we were considered thugs, but that's just how they saw us, but we weren't that. But resilience was one of the biggest ones. We never, if you go down, try to bring one of us down, we stand together as a team.
Mhm.
We're a family and that's it. And we never said, oh, this is my friend, this is my brother, this is my sister. That's how we did it. We never
Mhm.
said, oh, this is
It's
my friend.
awesome.
Yeah, so it was one of those things that we were already family already. And people in actuality thought we were blood related because how close we were all were. But it's just, yeah, resilience and just don't let anybody bring you down, you know?
I think I think that's something that we could all take, because I think a lot of times, especially when we're talking about people that identify in these ways, there are people that are constantly trying to bring you down for no good reason.
Mhm. Yeah,
And that could be very tiring, but it's also good that you keep getting up and keep going, and that you find kind of this in yourself too, this support and this love to keep pushing forward, and from the people around you, because you feed off of like energy
absolutely. It has to stay focused and positive. But you know what?
always.
When we were our chosen family, even on our side, we used to go to clubs. We would encounter guys who were so mean and nasty. When like I would go pick up one of my friends at his neighborhood in Humboldt Park, always derogatory. Years later, though, because I also worked at Cook County Jail, I
Hmm.
had to interview this guy. I said, "Do you remember me?"
Hmm.
He says, "No." I go, "I'm Omen." He goes, "Wait a minute, you used to hang around with?" I said, "Yes." I go, "Why were you like that?" He goes, "You know what? Why I would say those things to you guys?" I go, "Why?" They go, "Because I was jealous of you guys." So it turned out that he had
Hmm.
an internalized homophobia, that it was inside of him. And he says, "You know what? I experienced guys, and I knew that I was, but I was afraid because of the neighborhood and being Latino." I said, "I get it, but there's got to be other ways, instead of treating people the way you did. I mean, God, you could have done so much good." But I understand he was a gangbanger and he didn't want to get found out as being a Latino too. But then internalized homophobia ate him alive because it really destroyed who he was. And it's too bad. But I'm hoping he's good to this day. But it's too bad because it destroyed his kindness, because he was a good guy, but he
Hmm.
wasn't showing it to the LGBTQ community, unfortunately, you know?
I think, yeah, I think that highlights something when we're talking about like mean people in general and bullies, and it's often something about you that they are envious
Election,
of. Yes.
100%.
Yes.
And he
And
did
it's
say,
projecting, and yeah.
yeah, he did say that. He said, "I was so jealous when you guys used to hang out at so and so's house and you guys would dress up the way you wanted to." I mean, I always dressed thugged out when I went to the clubs, and some of my friends would queen out and put fishnets and stuff. It was really cool. He said, "You guys look like you had so much fun." I used to have Golden Girls parties when the Golden Girls were original back
Oh,
in
that's
the
awesome.
80s, my house. So we still talk about it to this day on Facebook. They're like, "Oh, remember the Golden Girls?" And he said that too. He goes, "Yeah, I found out you guys were doing this. And I wish I was one of those, but I couldn't. I couldn't be part of that." I get it, but all your life you let go. I mean, you got to break free of that. Find some form of therapy or something, because therapy helped us all. All of us went through therapy, and it saved my life many times. So yeah,
It is a lifesaver. And some of the kids I interact with now and I talk to, I think one of the cool things about working with kids at such young ages is that you are kind of in that preventative mode and that intervention mode early
yeah,
on, versus having somebody who's, in their 50s and 60s that have spent decades building on top of this
that's
internalized
right.
hatred and ignorance. And it's so hard to break. But in a kid that's, really just starting to explore these ideas, they're asking you for guidance. They're asking you questions about like,
Absolutely,
what does this mean? What does it mean when I was like, what do you think it means? Like, what are you feeling right now? Because
absolutely.
I can't tell you how to feel. I can't tell you how to identify, but what we can do is explore that together. And I can support you and I think my goal in like every therapy session I'm in, especially because I work exclusively with brown and black kids, of like
Mm,
creating that safe space and making
nice.
sure that in the hour that they're with me on a weekly basis is that they feel comfortable enough and safe enough to share with me different things. Whatever the hell that is. I don't know. Sometimes they be talking about stuff that I'm like, why are we sitting here talking about this? But it's what they want to share, because maybe they don't
Yeah,
get to share that at home. And I think it's really cool. I mean, one of my little girls, um, she is like exploring her identity more and her sexuality. And for Christmas, she made me a card and she was like, Jessica, I love you. Thank you for being the best. And
powerful.
yes, because prior to that, we had done so much identity exploration, and we had really she shared with me so much about what she was experiencing. And it's related to the fact that, like, in her family, that's not something they could talk about. Like, her dad keeps telling her, it's just a phase. You're going to grow out of this. Like, you're not,
Oh, all of us heard that. Of
yep. And her dad is, you know, I see him, he is a, very macho Latino
course.
man. And but I'm like, he's bringing her to therapy, so I'm like, I'll take it. But in the same effect, he doesn't know what we're talking about necessarily. And so it's interesting to see with her how much she shares with me, and the way she even kind of diminishes herself when she goes back out into the hallway. And I think that that's kind of a metaphor for how she really lives her life, to be honest.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and she's so young. She's just entering teenage years, and I mean, but it's still cool that I'm helping her explore this in a safe way and in a way that feels kind of authentic to her, and she's able to take it as slowly or as fast as she wants. Because I don't think a lot of kids get that luxury.
No, of course not. And you're a very powerful entity right now, especially these young kids. I mean, I know I worked with teenagers too when I was doing the social work, and they're so vulnerable and they want to
They
tell you so
are.
much. Take your time and get what you need, and let them know that you're there. You're in a very powerful position, let me tell you. Just
Yes.
Yeah, just stay that way. Stay humble, and because I see how you are, and it's like you're so loving and nurturing, and this is what these kids need, not bullshit. Don't get, it it
Mm.
it never ceases to amaze me when people tell these teenagers what they think they want to
You
hear.
want to
No,
hear, right?
let them speak, let them bring it out. And if it's not a good session, fine. It will get there eventually if you keep going, you
Yeah,
know.
well, I had an experience recently with a Latino girl. She was 17. We had done maybe 4 sessions. Her mom called a few days later asking to switch therapists. And I was kind of taken aback because at this point we had really made some groundbreaking for her. We made a lot of progress.
Yeah.
She was very apprehensive to therapy. She didn't know what it was. Um, and what I got from that was that she the daughter thought therapy would be like, taking a Tylenol. Like you have a headache, take Tylenol, you're fine. It
It's
goes away. It's done. But
the
she
process.
realized that every time she left therapy, maybe she didn't feel so good all the time, or she felt uncomfortable, or whatever the case may be based on what we talked about. But at 17, she also thinks she knows everything, and she thought
Yeah.
she was putting in so much work and all this other stuff. And she wasn't giving me a lot to work with. So what I learned from that interaction was just that taking it slow works sometimes, but people also have to be open to the process and understanding that it is a process. And when you
That's the
have,
key.
yes, and when you have maybe, you're older or you have a lot of stuff or a lot of trauma, it's going to take a long time to get through that
Yeah.
because you have to really, I don't want to say relive, but kind of sit in those feelings of whatever
And
you
understand
experience.
them.
Yes,
Yeah.
and kind of reflect on them and see what you could take from that moment.
Yeah.
But if you're not willing to do that, that's not going to happen. And your therapist's job is to not make you feel good. Because a lot of what she was looking for me was a lot of validation.
No,
And I don't give anybody validation like that
me
because
neither.
again, like I can only tell you so many times you're great and you're intelligent before you have to start believing it. Like you as
Yeah.
yourself have to really start feeding that into yourself. However, we could work on how to do that, but I can't continuously say the words because obviously it's not meaning anything if
That's not real though.
it's not.
It's a process, especially like what you do for a living. That's not easy. I mean, that's why I chose not to go that route because it was a little bit too much for me.
Mm.
But people need to understand therapy is not 1 day, 2 day, 3 days. It could be years before you understand what started the whole process of you being the way you are,
Right.
or how you're going to fix that on your own because a therapist can't fix it for you. They can just open up some of the doors and windows. You have
Hmm.
to walk through. Unfortunately, not
Yes.
everybody feels that way. And kids nowadays, like 16, 17, they do think they know it all. I mean, there's some kids who try to read me with that. It's like, no, wait a minute. I've been there, done that. If you knew
Right.
my past, you'd understand. So you're telling me something that I already know is not true. You need to leave it alone because
Right.
you can't bullshit me. I mean, come on. I mean, my years of experience changed things. But a lot of these kids think they know it. Oh, you don't know anything. Well, then tell me about it.
Right. Share. Say something. Tell me.
Yeah.
I think that was like just generally a very defining moment for me, like therapy wise, and like especially
Yeah.
somebody who was struggling so much with her identity and what it means to be her.
Hmm.
And she really couldn't sit with those feelings, and she did not like how I sat with those feelings. Um, and that's fine. Everybody's welcome to their prerogative, but at the same time, she's also she's gonna be she's gonna be 18 soon, and she's gonna be treated a certain way,
Yeah.
and it's not gonna be too kind to her sometimes. And um, I don't think she's prepared for that, and I wish her all the best because she was a great kid, like she was amazing, but she just had a lot of she needed more support from her family and she needed a lot of more time in therapy to kind of process and talk through these kind of things that have happened. But
Well, you could just learn from that. That's it. I mean, you never take that home with you and say, "What did I do?"
mm-mm,
No, that's you learn from it. That's it. You know, I mean, you're not going to save the world. Trust me. I mean, I went through
yeah,
that too, where I thought I was going to save everybody, and it didn't happen. And that's okay. You're going to have those hits and misses, but the thing is that at the end of the day, you did what you were supposed to do. You went 100%, and if somebody doesn't accept that, that's not on you. That's on them. It's unfortunate,
it
but
is.
it is what it is. Hate to say
Yes,
it.
I think that's kind of my identity of or my theme of life to it is what it is. Shit
Yeah,
happens.
yeah.
Um, but going back to kind of the topic about queer identity and Latino identity, I think broadly speaking, people of color have really built the queer community and really have
Yeah.
shaped it to be what it is. Um, so I was just curious more about maybe like challenges or joys that you find in being queer and being a Latino.
Like I told you in the beginning, being a Latino, I'm very proud of being Latino, Puerto Rican, Mexican, but I'm very proud of being a part of the community also in the LGBTQ community. Um, I'm a double-edged sword, I mean, I could identify with women and men when they need advice. Women and men come to me, not just one. And I can be very open about the advice I give. I never give advice unless you ask for it. I
Mm.
always tell people, be very careful. My coworkers tell me this, be very careful what you ask me. Damian, how does this dress look on me? Be very careful about that because I don't hold back. I'm going to be very blunt and straight up, and I don't hide. So I don't know. I'm just very proud of all those different mixes that I have together because it brings a different flavor as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I have a lot of my relatives who are closeted who come to me all the time, call me up, text me, Facebook me, whatever, and asking me questions and stuff. How did you survive this? Why didn't it break you? Well, because I was resilient. I was
Mm.
resilient and I had that support. Later on, when my mom found out truly that I was gay, that it wasn't a phase, she became one of my closest friends. So to this day, she's one of my closest friends, and we bump heads all the time. We fight. Let me tell you. And my partner of 28 years, believe it or not, tells me,
No.
"You need to stop yelling at your mom." And I'm not yelling. I just Puerto Ricans, we talk loud.
We're
You know,
passionate. That's all.
passionate. So he's always getting at me on that. But no, so it's hilarious. But this is what gives me my flavor. I love everything about my life. And yeah, it could be better at times, but who cares? I strive for the best, and I try to push people to do the best too. But when they show me they don't want that part, I just back up.
Yeah.
I
And
don't need to
that's
validate people all the time. I don't.
no. And it's exhausting to have to validate
Tiring.
people all the
Yes.
time.
It's
Yes.
very tiring. You have narcissistic people in your life that, oh, you haven't said I look good today. Or you haven't. No, that's not me.
Mhm.
I mean, I
You could
tell you
look in the
once, it's like,
mirror and say it to
and you
yourself.
could figure it out yourself. But no, I
Right.
don't need to. It is what it is.
And that's not your job as like the
No,
friend or the partner to, constantly have to validate someone.
no, no.
It's not
And
your
me and my partner
responsibility.
we have these conversations all the time. Like I said, I've been with my partner 28 long years, and it's beautiful years. It's good, it's bad, it's ugly. We're totally opposite, but we complement each other, and that's the important thing. He's very into the Buddhism belief and very Zen, and I'm not. I'm a fire. I scream and kick and everything, and he doesn't. That's the balance, though. That's the
Right.
balance. And at the end of the day, you look at the good, forget the negativity. That's too much negative in the world. And when you start bringing negativity to me, not that I shut down, but I tell you, come on now, it's too much. I don't harness that energy. I don't.
I think that's beautiful though, because a lot of people do really internalize that stuff and it causes explosions and,
Sooner or
bad,
later.
bad moments.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess like to kind of close out, I have like two questions for you. So
Yeah.
I think you kind of just answered this, but maybe in a different way. What advice would you give to someone in the LGBTQ plus community
Mhm.
who's Latino or somebody of color who is struggling with family rejection?
Seek, talk, speak. Don't hold it in. Don't internalize things because when you internalize, it becomes a cancer. It doesn't matter who you go to, whether it's a relative you trust or a friend or even a hotline. Seek, because a
Mhm.
lot of times we're afraid. I remember when I was a kid, I reached out to a LGBT, well, it was a gay hotline, and I ended up going to their group sessions, and then the counselor actually tried to make a pass at me. So that
Oh,
shut
wow.
me down right there. Yeah, it was many years ago. But don't let those things define you. Seek until you find what you need. You know, just don't hold it in and don't hold it in. It's not worth it. You know,
It's
just
not,
don't hold
it's
it in.
not. That's how
No,
you, because your mind feeds your body, and when your body
duh.
starts to feel all those things, you might start to feel stuff physically, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's just not good for you.
And find a way to let it out. Like I said, I look back at my youth and I think, wow, you did good. Not everything was picture perfect, but I did good. And it's like not to boast, but I think that I did what I was supposed to do to get to where I need to be. You
Mhm.
know, and extravaganza, they always say, learn it and learn it well, and I did. I really
I
did.
love that. I
Yeah,
love that. It's very pretty.
yeah.
Well, I guess my last question for you is
Mhm.
that looking back on all this, on your journey and kind of where you came from and where you are, what are you most proud of in the way you've built your life and community?
What am I most proud of? I think what I'm most proud of is that I kept it together. I didn't give up, and I gave to the community. I still give to the community. One of my friends who's a he's a community activist. He says, "I need your picture because there's a Hall of Fame here in the city of Chicago, which there is." And I'm not the type of person to boast about stuff. I just don't see the need to, but I'm very proud of my gay Latin roots. I really am. I mean, I mean that passionately because I never hid being gay. I never hid being a Latino. I never hid, loving Mexican, Puerto Rican culture. It's just innate in me. And I just wish other people can love themselves at that point. Yeah, I wasn't the most handsome teenager, or it didn't matter. All that was
Was
so
anybody?
superficial. Not right. But growing up, that's what they make you think. Oh my God, you don't look like this, or you don't like that. You got to be skinny. You got to do that. No, accept yourself for who you are, be who you are, and run with it. Because all of
Mhm.
us add a little bit of flavor to that sazon. You
We
just have
do.
to just run with it. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you for sharing with us today. I think kind of my final way to close this out. I appreciate all your vulnerability and all your
Yeah.
sharing. It's really great to have kind of people who are authentically themselves and really living in their truth because that is unfortunately kind of hard to find.
Yeah.
Um, and it's something that I know takes a lot of work and beauty and elegance to it. It's a craft for sure.
Oh, it is.
Um, so I guess to kind of close this out, I want to say a few things about family and what it means. So
Mhm.
in the last year, I've learned through some unfortunate events in my own family and deaths and learning more about people is like what family really means. And sometimes we really have to redefine what that means. And there is a lot of strength, healing, and beauty in creating connections that, for me, most importantly, feel safe and loving
Mhm.
and a place where you could really truly be yourself and authentically live your truth, however that is, however you want that displayed, and having people around you that will nurture that and really respect and give you a certain love with that. So, whether it's with blood relatives or chosen family, finding our people can really remind us that we're not alone and that we should talk to somebody. We really, really should talk to somebody. I kind of talked about this in my last episode, but we really, really need to let these things out. Because, like you're saying, if you hold them in, it's just not good. No bueno. Um,
And tribes are important.
they are.
Tribes
They are.
within our community are very important.
And there's a reason why humans used to live in more collectivist cultures because we are not meant to be so alone. And you're not
Mm.
alone because there's always somebody, in we don't have the same experience because we're different people, but in some capacity, somebody's experiencing something similar to what you are. And maybe you could
Absolutely.
find some community in that. So, thank you for joining to me today as we talked about families, Latinos, queer culture, and kind of what it means to be yourself. And I hope this conversation inspires you to reflect on the connections that bring you joy and, most importantly, peace. So until the next time, take care of yourself and those you love.